details, right? So
Yeah.
We don't expect you to know many details.
no, yeah, I mean, I'm just like, I know a ton. I'm just saying I don't know all of it. But
You know what details I do know something about? Dresden Files. Welcome to the Dresden Files podcast. I'm Andreas, that's Alex, and that's Justin, and we're here to talk about Dresden. It's been a while.
Yeah, I know it's been like a month actually. I had to go like look at our old episode and just be like, where did I end up? Because my notes are all kind of run together. I've done readings since then, so
it's funny, like it's been so long that it has this like buildup of tension if I need to talk about Dresden because I'm an addict or some form of like I heard of a church nearby that was like Saint Michael the Archangel. And I was like, that sounds Dresden-y.
Yeah.
Just like that's it. I just like I have to talk about Dresden.
What a bunch of nerds.
Yeah.
Nerd.
Yeah. I don't know. I have other outlets, I guess. So, noir doesn't define my entire personality. So, I can talk about Star Wars or Star Trek or Marvel's been really big this month. So
we were bitching about Marvel last week. Like those other outlets, it's just not the same as this one thing that I've had in my head for half my life. Yeah.
Jeez.
I was 15 when I started reading the books.
Oh my God, dude. I was in my mid-20s. So, it's been about the same amount of time, 20s. But not the same percentage of life.
Yeah.
So, yeah. 15, huh? Yeah, because like we're constantly reevaluating every time we consume some kind of media that we deem inappropriate for the kids to be like, oh yeah, when can we start them on like Alien? Because
actually, I think it was like leading up to 15. I was still technically 14 if I remember right where I was in the year. But yeah,
at least thank God it wasn't Twilight. So
Oh, I read Twilight the same year.
Oh,
actually, yeah.
Well, didn't like that as much.
Yeah,
I like Twilight fine.
Picked correctly.
No, I like it's realizing that I like the supernatural modern setting is really like kind of like all of that seemed to happen all at once. I mean, I like
I've
things
been a
like
sucker
before.
for that ever since.
I liked
Buffy.
Angel. I didn't really understand why I liked Angel.
Yeah, Buffy, Angel, and Supernatural, like those three shows were running at the same time. Is what got me
never
into.
watched Supernatural. Unlikely ever I'm going to. And I didn't like Buffy, and I couldn't pinpoint as to why I was frustrated with it.
Stop by season 6. That's all you got to do. Or is it 5? Whatever.
5. 1 to 5 of Supernatural is really good. Yeah. It does get better, but if you just want a really good experience, 1 to 5 is great.
Yeah. Stop at the end. That's all you got to do. Like the next 2 or 3 years are pretty rough. That's all I'm saying. After that, so
and then it starts getting better. Have you seen all of it, Justin?
No.
Okay.
I've seen... because I think I got up to. So we fought the Leviathans. Then we fought all of hell. Then we fought all of heaven. And then I was like, I don't know who else we're fighting. I think I'm pretty much done. I think it jumped the shark like 3 seasons ago. And then, they were like, what if we killed Death? And I'm not even fucking with you. There are episodes about that. So like,
hey, you want to know how that works out?
Death dies.
Yeah. When you kill Death, then the next Reaper who dies, who they also kill, becomes Death.
Right. Yeah.
And she was not happy about that.
Yeah, I don't know. Fine. There are definitions of fine, Cody, but like, Supernatural is fine,
Supernatural Supernatural is really 1 to 5 is some of the best TV I've seen. Like it's really actually really good. And then there's a lot of shit seasons, but there was also some really cool seasons.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say. Like, I mean, I guess that could be, that could be a definition of fine, is that there's a lot of really good parts in Supernatural, but like overall taken as a whole kind of averages out in some places. So, and it dips way low in others. But anyway, Dresden and TV, because, that's kind of a thing that we're doing.
Yeah.
It's funny. I can't remember the specifics now, but there was something I said yesterday to my wife, which was like, oh yeah. And then, they should do like this kind of thing. And it's like, sorry, I've been planning, I've been producing in my head for a while, I guess. That I'm super amateur, right? I'm not going to tout my skills at all, but I started talking shop a little bit and was like, oh, I see what's happening here. So, okay. So weird place to have left off last time due to time, but we stopped at chapter 19, which I think that was, really cool scenes of Murphy and Dresden getting jumped by the tigress, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're kind of in the middle of Walmart, of that whole thing where
we're about to get chloroformed.
Yes, which wasn't in my notes, but I rewatched that part where the director's face lit up and she was so excited to talk about it a month ago. So we're gonna do that. But basically Murphy, like, for some reason, even though it's way overly dramatic in my head, like I'm channeling Predator 1, where like they shoot at the predator and it runs through the bushes and stuff like that, and I'm like, I don't know how we recreate that and stay truthful to the way it happens in Dresden, because that's not really how it happens. But like the tigress runs off through a bunch of like potted plants and stuff while Murphy's just like blasting away at her with her.
So anyway,
11 in this case, see, cinematic.
I started.
So, yeah, right. Anyway, you started blasting.
Yeah.
So that was the end of chapter 19. Oh no, the end of chapter 19 was him being grabbed by the chlorofiend, but chapter 20 starts out, Murphy, get clear. The plant monster. No, wait. I couldn't possibly refer to that thing as a plant monster. I'd be a laughingstock. So, again, internal monologue.
Yeah.
Are we going to die on this hill, director? Does he say this out loud? Like,
I don't know. It does depend on a lot of execution, and some of that it does depend on like the skill of an actor to make it entertaining instead of tooth pulling.
Yeah. I do envision him dangling upside down and be like, Murphy, get clear, the plant or the plant chlorofiend, and just kind of interrupt himself,
something like that, or just like he calls it a chlorofiend and Murphy's like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And so therefore it doesn't sound as awesome when he has to explain his joke.
Yeah, he says, get clear, the chlorofiend. What the hell's a chlorofiend? The giant plant monster. Just shoot it, Murph. So
chlorofiend.
Yeah, that's another
plant monster. Yeah, that works. That works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Internal monologues are not terrible. They just, because they've been done to death, they have to be done.
We shouldn't do
really,
internal monologue in a TV
really
show. That's a hill I will die on. I don't.
It's amazingly difficult to pull off accurately and give it the right kind of gravitas, because the problem is it violates show don't tell, right? The full definition of an internal monologue is that he's literally talking at you and it's an info dump, right? And it works in the Dresden Files, but that's not necessarily going to work in a visual media. And so I get it, right? I'm not saying we have to do it. Where it butts into it is that internal monologue is also one of the defining features of Dresden and the Dresden Files.
And
that's
noir.
The problem.
There's two different sides of it. I do totally get it. And this is a side comment, but like a couple of months ago before my move, I watched a show called Sugar. It is a noir. It was really good. It was actually kind of short. I think the episodes are like 30 minutes each and there's like 8 of them. It had Colin Farrell as a main character in Hollywood doing noir stuff. And then it gets a little bit weird, and I'm just going to leave it at that. But it was really, really, really good.
Which direction is the weird? Like, can you even hint
unexpected.
At that? Or is that
and I'm not going to, I don't want to tell you anything more than that because I want you to be taken unexpectedly. It was really,
How many
really,
seasons
really
did you say it is?
One season.
One season. When I think about the internal monologue, but it's like Sin City, they don't do a lot of the talking over the internal monologue stuff, and it kind of works, but it also, I feel like it would be grating in a 10-episode TV show and then a lot of seasons versus a 2-hour tightly paced movie.
I mean, think about it. You got an hour-long episode and 15 minutes of it are inside this dude's head. That's not going to work, right? It's a meme for this format while we're talking about it to be like, internal monologue. Guess what? Where he starts thinking about how the queens are. That's internal monologue. How are we going to do an exposition on that? while we're doing this. The whole talking about the chlorophene and how Bob's going to be mad at him, or he's reusing Bob's name or something like that. How do we convey that? We're just not, is part of it, right? There's a lot of stuff that's going to be left to the fans, first of all. And I think we can hook it in just enough that it's like, if you've read the books, you're going to get the same amount out of it. You'll get more out of it having read the books, but
that's the goal. Yeah. Like if you have read the books and you get more out of it, but if you haven't read the books, you can still really enjoy it. That would be the goal I would want out of execution, of like, it's both good for the fans who already know it all and good for someone who's coming in blind. But that's the hard part.
Right. Yeah,
because it's key that someone who's not read Dresden can watch the TV show in terms of actual financial success. It's like Game of Thrones. You could watch Game of Thrones without having read Game of Thrones.
Well, but it's both, right? And that's what I've been maintaining for years about these IPs, right? Is like you're 80% or more probably of your initial fans, I'd be surprised if they weren't the existing fans. People who don't know aren't going to look at the Dresden Files and be like, oh yeah, the Dresden Files, I've heard of that, let's watch it. I would guess a small subset of that would be, right? Whereas like you start to hook them on the themes and be like, okay, well, it's noir, it's modern fantasy, it's a wizard who's also we're doing a buddy cop thing. Maybe he's a wizard detective. You can start to get people in on those themes, and then you're going to start to keep them on the fact that it makes sense. That's where you're going to get your second and third seasons and everything like that. But yeah, like your initial infusion is going to be the existing fans. So you got to keep those guys around. And then your longevity is going to be bringing in new people, which you're only going to do with quality, and making it make sense. That's the way I see it. I'd love to have a grip of statisticians and, surveyors and people behind me to, elaborate on what that actually looks like, because Hollywood still hasn't seemed to learn the lesson over and over and over again. But
that's more the creatives actually working on those TV shows who are like, so I want to take this source material adaptation, but I am a better writer, so I want to change it. And that gets arrogance, I would say.
Or even if they don't just say outright that they're a better writer, they've got to leave their mark. They've got to do something unique and cool and just be like, cool, write it, dude. That's the point. Like, I mean, I guess we could throw stones and just be like,
this story that's already established, to do your thing that you think is cool, which it breaks the rules of the story that you're already working on. And you're completely changing like what is being delivered.
Right. Yeah, I was going to be snarky for a second and just be like, I mean, we could say that that's all that the Dresden Files is, right? Jim Butcher took all of these ancient stories and oral traditions and has expanded on them and wrote his own cool story. But at the same time, though, he does what we were talking about, which is I feel like he honors the source material enough where it all just kind of makes sense. And what's wilder about it is when you realize how many of the mythologies that he fits in together, like all of them. And at no point you're just like, I mean, only when you get to like, it's almost like D&D with all of their pantheons and stuff like that. It's like, okay, so where did the universe come from though? Because if you've got like, God, and you've got, the Greek gods, and you've got the Norse gods, and you've got where did it actually come from? Because they all couldn't have created, the earth, right? Right. So but that's kind of my thing. It's like, other than on some extreme ends, for the most part, I feel like it all gels pretty well together. And that's something you don't always get from,
I mean, we still haven't gotten it properly explained, right? Except we've had some pretty good questions we've gotten answers to that, like, for example, there's one Uriel, right? So that means there's also this one god, there's one mother, but there are many maps. So we get like an idea about where the power scale is and where it divides and who like what. So I would guess something like God is the primordial, created everything, and then created angels and created these, and then these the mothers could almost be like the Sandman, where there are these these aspects who just came to be to represent certain things, like the mother of Mother Winter's death, amongst other things, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah. We're not doing that episode, so I'm not gonna dive into it with you. But yeah, for simplicity's sake, I feel like it's just been like outsourced, or maybe it's the other way around, like what you were suggesting, and they're like emergent properties of, kind of having all of this stuff. But so scene. The chlorophene lifted me up and shook me like a set of maracas. So, are we doing practical effects for that? Like we're going to build, like we'll chain them up to a crane or to a like backhoe and just like wiggle them around a little bit. So,
yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah. A lot more inner monologue. He gets thrown against a chain link fence, but he had his shield on. So special effects. Because if he didn't have his shield on, it would have broken his back. I don't know if it's just me. Already. Yeah, I don't know if it's just me this rereading, but I've actually got several notes of where some of this shit comes back later, and I'm like, I don't see how you're connecting book 4 and 15 like this. But did you leave the framework? Because, for example, in a few minutes, Murphy's going to get her knee busted open, right? Is it the same knee as Nicodemus targets? Yeah, right. So I'll circle back around to that, but that was like one of my only notes for that section, actually, was like, wait a minute. So trying to focus on the filming part though. So let's see. So he gets the wind knocked out of his lungs. Azure and argent light flashed in a vague sphere around me. So notes to the special effects team, right? So
it's a good thing we got infinite budget, right, Ichi?
He agrees. Yeah, he's not here, and I don't like to speak for him, but we know what he'd say. So, he didn't bounce much. He just fell to the concrete. The shield gave out a more feeble flash when I hit. I got up off the ground, dodged away from the chlorophene, but it followed me, slapping aside a stand of wooden tomato stakes with one leafy arm instead of beefy arm. So, its glowing green eyes blazed as it came. I ran up against the fence at the back, at the end of the lot, and the chlorophene's huge fist smashed down at me again.
I never picked up on that. Do you think that was on purpose, or
possibly? I'm giving him all credit right now. I'm in that mindset where it's like, nah, there are no accidents. All of this was on purpose. So. Yeah, so there's actually a lot of visual fodder for this because, basically the chlorophene's going to punch him again. He brings another shield up, but he's getting just hammered by this thing. Let's see. So it tossed me a dozen feet down the length of fence and into a set of huge steel partition shelves holding hundreds of 50-pound bags of mulch, potting soil, and fertilizer. I lay there dazed for a second, staring at an empty aisle display proclaiming in huge scarlet letters, "Weed be gone, only $2.99." So really easy to just transfer this all visually, right? But he had to duck again as the chlorophene's fist as it punched at his head. It hit one of the metal shelves instead of me, and there was a shriek of warping metal, a creaking yowl of pain from the fiend, and a burst of sizzling smoke. The creature drew its smoking fist back and screeched again, eyes blazing even brighter, angrier. "Steel," I muttered. "So you're a fairy something or other, too." So.
What? In the fairy book? No way, dude.
Right.
What are the odds?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it could have been like, it was made of like mortal plants, theoretically, right? So, it could have been entirely mortal plants. But, yeah, let's see. So he starts to get an idea and he runs. He runs to the end of the row, the end of the steel shelves. I turned to face it. Hell's bells, that thing was bigger than Grum. I could see through it in places where twists of branches and leaves were not too closely clumped with earth, but that didn't make it seem any less massive or dangerous. If this didn't work, I wasn't going to last long enough to regret it. More inner monologue about magic. He's talking about evocation. This actually made it into my notes, but for this sake, I'm going to skip it because, he's talking about quick and dirty magic. Evocation is drawn directly from a wizard's will and turned loose without the benefit of guide or limit. He only knows a couple that he could do reliably, and even then they require focus, such as my shield bracelet or blasting rod. Interesting that he includes his shield bracelet and evocation here because Wizards of the Coast would disagree, but I digress.
I mean, evocation at Dresden is just the moving of magical forces
raw magic,
around, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's all moving magical forces, but yeah. So, but here basically he's just building up his inner monologue until he mutters Vento, feeling more power stir. The chlorophene bellowed again and sent a jolt of fear through me, and the winds rose even more. Vento, Vento, Ventus Servitus. And
there it is. Is this the first time?
I don't think so, because he did a couple where he would just grabbed his staff or
right, okay.
And stuff. I think even in like Stormfront, right? With the toad demon, because he was totally naked. So he grabbed it from his stand. So, but he's done the Jedi thing a couple of times, but instead of it being telekinesis or something along those lines, he uses wind, which it's like you could probably Fozari that too, and it'd probably be more efficient. But I'm not the wizard.
Seems to be away from him almost always.
Well, yeah, but I guess I mean just like will, because he also redirects it though too. It's going to be a while before we get to proven guilty, but when he's hammering on the xenomorph, I think he talks about making like a bowling ball of energy and just like smashing it around the hallway. Is kind of the way I remember that scene. So, but it is an interesting note that it's mostly out, whereas Ventus Servitus, like he uses it in a variety of different ways, right?
So because wind can go in different directions, but it in the mass of the spell, Fozari seems to be away from the center point that is him. Perhaps.
Sure. Yeah. Being somewhat of a physics nerd, though, I'm just like, can't you just like, point it at you a little bit, So
put a negative sign on the thing.
Yeah, and just like just like a little bit of juice, because I do want a montage of him trying to work this out and just smashing himself in the face with his staff over and over again, right? Because that's what that looked like. But, so.
Like that one time he tried to make a, what was it, flying broom, flying carpet, whatever it was.
Flying carpet.
Sure. Yeah. So basically he knocks over like a whole row of shelves, more or less. It went down like a bush under a bulldozer, shrieking again as the steel shelves crushed it and burned into its substance. A foul grayish smoke rose from the wreckage, and the chlorophene continued to scream and thrash, and the shelves jerking and moving. Exhaustion swept over me with the effort of the spell. I glowered down at the fallen shelves. Down, I panted, but not out. Damn it. I watched the shelves for a moment and decided that the chlorophene probably wouldn't shrug it off for a few minutes. I shook my head and headed for the gate into the enclosure. Hopefully Grum hadn't twisted things up so badly I couldn't get out. He had. So. Pinched into a mess by his talons. He checked above, decided to risk climbing the fence and getting through the barbed wire. Ow. I mean, he's wearing leather at least, but still ow. So he'd gotten maybe halfway up the chain link fence when Murphy limped out of the mist on the other side, her gun pointed right at me. Whoa, Murph, I said. It's me. Christ, Harry, what are you doing? Texas cage match. I won. From behind me, the chlorophene let out another shriek, and the shelving groaned as it shifted. I gulped and looked back. Rematch doesn't look promising, though. Where have you been? Shopping? Where's Crumb and the ghoul? Don't know. The ghoul's blood trail went out, but someone shot at me when I followed it. Haven't seen the ogre. Damn, I guess he shut you in here, huh? Pretty much. You get shot? No. Why? You're limping. Yeah, one of those bastards must have thrown a bunch of marbles on the floor. I slipped on one. It's my knee. Oh, you did that? Well, it was a plan at the time. Harry, that's not a plan. It's a Looney Tune. Kill me later. Help me out of here.
You just need like word for word.
Right.
You can't miss it.
I definitely get way more into like, we got to have the actor and actress have the chemistry, right? Because that's what's going to sell this stuff. It's just like.
Butcher writes character-driven stories, and that's part of what it just kept us reading these for so long. And so therefore, if anyone is going to bring these characters to life, they have to do it with extreme skill and ability to not ruin it. Because if those two are not in sync, this whole thing is ruined.
Yeah, if one or both or either of them is, wooden in their delivery, if you don't have that subtlety of like snark or that half wryness, or whatever that they're talking about and whatever, but I just had it pop into my head. One of my buddies attends a lot of writing workshops, and he was talking about like script writing and stuff like that it's like you give no direction in the script of like how a line is supposed to be delivered or whatever. It's usually always just like this character said this character said that or whatever, but on occasion you can give a slight direction. But that also turned into a meme where it was like, so and so said this Riley, so all of the like workshops and stuff like that, they always joke about the writers with their Rileys, because I was like, man, you got to explain that whole thing. But I've been taking notes, so it does fascinate me, because it's like I've seen a number of scripts and held them in various things for that, usually for Star Trek and whatever, but it's like, man, they're so plain. Like, how do you get from here to there, and stuff like that? But
that's what a director does, because of jokes of actors. Like, what am I supposed to be doing? What emotion am I supposed to be giving? And the directors are supposed to be giving them, like, but then you have to rely on a director to know what the fuck they're doing to do it correctly. So somehow from script to director's head, it's like they still need to mesh of what's happening here.
Right.
I don't get it.
Right. Magic. So, I mean, and you do get the dangerous but often sometimes really good scenes where it's like, the actor takes ownership of the character in a lot of ways, and they're like, actually I think I'd be feeling this right now, or something like that. And then you get something like Deadpool and Wolverine, just saying. So all right, so they do the whole like, well, if you put your foot here and you put that thing there, which we'll do again actually in the Never Never, I think. So Murphy so Murphy says, we're 20 feet from the hardware department. Genius. She limped back into the mist and returned half a minute later carrying a pair of bolt cutters. Cut a slit into the chain link fence, and I squeezed through it while the chlorophene thrash still pinned. So by the way, like, maybe I shouldn't tell you this, but like most fences, you can cut like 3 things and not like 20, doing a slit in the chain link fence. There's a bunch of advantages to that I'm not going to elaborate on right now.
Was there a past you haven't told us about? Did you even like?
Yes, but not mine. So okay. I learned from example. So yeah, if you guys stick around, maybe I'll tell you after if you're that curious. But Harry says, I could kiss you. Murphy grins. You smell like manure, Harry. What now? Just for the record, that wasn't a no. That was a cleanup first. And so this whole like, oh man, it was such a surprise when they got together. No, guys.
What fucking wasn't? Were you blind?
It was always there. I might be talking to certain people that still think that Lucio's got a shot, so I don't know. But
I'm not saying she's got a. I'm saying it worked. I'm just saying it worked. It was uncomplicated. Well, it wasn't until it wasn't. But
yeah. Also, the Molly crew. Just saying. So
now that I don't want to touch. That's right. On them. That's they can have that.
Not gonna split the difference and just well, kind of. No. All right. Let's see. The trapped monsters thrashing set several smaller shelves toppling over, and I rubbernecked nervously. Getting out of this is first priority. That thing is down, but it'll be coming before long. What is it? Chlorophene. Oh, they actually even do the thing. So chlorophene. A what? Plant monster. Oh, right. So we need to get out.
You're not smart or original. We've just read this book a few times.
Right. Possibly even 3 times in the last month, so yeah. But it also, I think, kind of shows to the fact that like he knows, which is like so much of the modern TV stuff. It's like, guys, I just needed a sentence. You're telling me that you couldn't have recorded just a sentence to say, we thought about it. We get you. Shut up. We know what we're doing. And when you don't do things like that, it makes me think.
And you also don't know what you're doing.
Yes, right. So, yeah, I forget what it was, but I think some of it might have been like Discovery, certainly the last season. I was like, I'll be like, oh, well, they should do this or whatever. And then they come on like, a few minutes later and they're like, well, what if we did this? And they're like, no, that's stupid because why? And I'm like, okay, cool. At least you addressed it. Right. But it's funny because there's a lot of stuff like that's when I get excited watching something anymore these days is like, I'll just be like, I wonder if the character's going to do this or, try to get out in front of the story a little bit. And then, they'll address it. And I'm like, okay, I'm placated now. Like I'm happy. So, and then when they don't, then I'm just like, who's writing this shit? Really?
I'll have I've theory crafted 4 seasons of a TV show so far. I could do this, man.
And I've been a nerd for way longer than that. So, I mean, yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm going to reiterate, I'm trying very carefully to say this is all thought experiment stuff. Maybe someday it'll turn into something. Not for a minute am I going to sit here and be like, well, I'm somewhat of a producer myself, or whatever. Like, yeah, it's I always give side eye to the people that like introduce themselves and they're like, actually, I'm a writer. I'm like, yeah, I've never heard of you. So what's that worth? Like,
yeah, are you out Alex or
so
something?
I don't saying anybody in particular.
No, I say I'm a director of a podcast you've never heard of instead.
Sure. See, and that's, true and self-deprecating all at once, like just be grounded about it. Right. Be like, cause everybody's all like, oh, you've written anything I've heard of? Oh God, no. Nope. Like a couple of recipes on a blog somewhere, probably see how quickly that crumbles. Like, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of pages, but mostly just recipes on a blog somewhere. But anyway, okay. They're going back and forth about how to get out. The ogre Grum is certainly watching the back. Murphy's like, ogre, check. What's his deal? Bullets bounce off of him and he shakes off magic like a duck does water. He's strong and pretty quick and smarter than he looks. You can't blast him like you did the Loop Guru. Gave him a hard shot once already. I may as well have been spitting on him. Doesn't look like we have much choice for getting out. And even if we do, Grum or that plant thing could run us down. So we'll need wheels. Blah, blah, blah. Back and forth. Harry has a plan. Better than the Looney Tune, I hope. I grunted in reply. No need to agree with her. So, we both realized that. Go ahead.
It's just like, I mean, those Looney Tune tactics, like if throwing out marbles, that could work. That's not terrible.
Yeah, but as he's learned, mass has something to do with it. So, but yeah. So the last line is, we both realized that if this plan wasn't better than the last one, then as Porky Pig would say, that's all, folks. So, chapter 21.
That's all, folks.
Yeah. Man, we did a whole chapter in 30 minutes. We're so good at this. So, all right.
We did have a bit of a bigger
digression
lore. Like,
yeah. Us, never.
Never.
Yeah. So. See, and this one will be tricky transition wise and stuff because it's book transition, right? So he explains her the plan clearly, but we don't know that. But it's inferred from the writing. And then 3 minutes later, Murphy and I went out the back door and Grum was waiting for us. And I mean, there are ways to handle this, right? It's the classic like a heist thing.
You could do like here's what we do, and then we just cut to the action.
Sure, something like that. Because it's like, isn't the trope, it's like if you explain the plan in advance, it will fail.
Yeah.
But if you don't explain the plan and you just watch it unfold, then it'll succeed. And so we don't know the plan, but we're about to. So it works. But, yeah.
I mean, I've seen a lot of TV shows and movies where they go like, here's what we're going to do. And then it cuts to them actually doing it.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, that's fair. So, 3 minutes later, Murphy and I went out the back door and Grum was waiting for us. He rose up out of the shadows by the large trash bins with a bull elephant's bellow and stomped towards us. Murphy dragging a leg and, wrapped somewhat desperately in a plaid auto blanket, let out a shrill cry and turned to run, but tripped and fell on the ground before the ogre. Classic. Like, I just want to even like superimpose like the black and white, because this is such a horror trope, and like she's running from the monster and she trips and oh, she's so helpless. So I kept my left hand behind my back and lifted my right. Flame danced up from my cupped fingers and I thundered, "Grum!" The ogre's beady eyes turned to me, glittering. He let out another rumbling snarl. "Stand thee from my path," I called in an overdramatic voice, "lest I grow weary of thee and bereft thee of thy life." Because, classic. So, "I do not fear thy power, mortal," he snarled. "This is thy last warning, fairy dog." "Feeble mortal trickster, thy spellfire means nothing to me. Do thy worst." Behind Grum, Murphy threw the auto blanket off her shoulders and with one rip of the starting cord fired up her shiny new Coleman chainsaw. She engaged the blade with a hissing whir of air and without preamble swung it in an arc that ended precisely at the back of Grum's thick, hairy knee. The steel blade chewed through the ogre's hide as if it was made of styrofoam. Blood and bits of meat flew up in a gruesome cloud. Do thy worst. So... the ogre screamed, his body contorted in agony. The scarlet skin around the injury immediately swelled, darkening to black, and tendrils of infectious-looking darkness spread from the wound up over the ogre's leg and hip within the space of a breath. He swept one huge fist at Murphy, but she was already getting out of his reach. The ogre's weight came down on the injured leg, and Grum fell to the earth with a heavy thud.
I'm surprised something like that doesn't break the glamour, actually.
True, yeah. Yeah. Maybe they don't have to concentrate like mortal wizards. So maybe it's not maybe it's not a glamour,
right? So he's getting caught in this leg that he's made, that like, because he's like, is he actually that form or is it fully an illusion?
I was going to say maybe it's not a glamour, it's a polymorph. Yeah. So he's an ogre right now. Not
speaking of polymorph, by the way, nice. You've been putting in the reps at the D&D table with the voices there.
Yeah, I do. It's actually more nightly with the kids.
I was gonna say that too. I was gonna say it's either the D&D table or it's reading to the kids.
I don't always have the headspace at the D&D table to work in some kind of accent or not. And the worst part of it is the hardest part is the consistency. Right.
Yeah.
With the kids, I'm reading a book over like 15-30 minutes tops, so we'll do things where like a lot of my improv for that sort of thing is I've got a couple of silly versions of various stories that I'll read and word substitutions in the moment, and those can be a hit, but not always. Sometimes they don't want the funny version, they just want me to read it straight. But I do try to differentiate. But when you've got like 3 or 4 characters, it's a lot easier than like, wait a minute, an hour ago wasn't that guy British? I'm like, shit, I don't know, man. Like, I didn't write that down in my notes. All right. So
this is how Tolkien wrote down his books.
Yeah. Damn the boy.
Have you had Amber have to read and then they go, no, you gotta do the voice like that?
They'll do it to me. I don't know if they do that to her. We very much have different bedtime routines for a variety of different things, but but it's been a while, but I have read books where they're like, that's not how mom did it. And I'm like, I'm not mom. I'm reading it my way. So
do they accept that? Or are they more like, no, you got to do it like mom?
Yeah. I mean, there is only so much nonsense that you can abide from children. So at some point you just have to be like, you're very adorable. Now shut up, which Princess Bride. So, but yeah. So more horror story nonsense. Grum starts dragging himself, chasing after Murphy. Let's see, dragging himself with his talons on the concrete. Grum got a hold of Murphy's foot and started dragging her back toward him. She let out a hollow gasp, then twisted and wriggled, and she slipped out of her sneaker and hauled herself away from the ogre, her face gone white and drawn. I ran up behind Grum, pulling my left hand out from behind my back, the fingers of my right hand still curled around the flickering flame I'd shown the ogre. A large yellow and green pump pressure water gun sloshed a little bit sloshed a little in my left fist. I lowered it and squeezed the trigger. A stream of gasoline sprayed out all over Grum's back, soaking the ogre's skin. Grum whirled toward me halfway through, and I shot the gasoline into his eyes and nose, eliciting another scream. He bared his fangs and glared at me through eyes swollen almost shut. Wizard, he said, understandable through fangs in the hardly understandable through the fangs and drool. Your spell flame will not stop me. I turned my right hand slowly and showed Grum the burning can of Sterno I'd been palming. Good thing I've got this plain old vanilla fire then, huh? I tossed the lit can of Sterno onto the gasoline-soaked ogre. Oh, that's it. Hamstrung and blazing like a birthday candle, Grum screamed and thrashed.
Blazing like a birthday candle.
Yeah. I skipped back and around him, helping Murphy to her feet as the ogre slammed himself against the ground and then against the back wall of the Walmart. He did that in a frenzy for maybe 20 seconds before uttering an odd, ululating cry and hurling himself at a deep shadow behind a trash bin and vanished, the light from the flame simply disappearing. What happened? We whipped him, I said. He packed up and headed back to Ferry. For good? For now. How's your leg? Hurts. I think I broke something. I can hop on the other one. I think this is where I had the notes of like, is this the same leg that Nicodemus targets later when they're doing their duel? Is this the leg that she broke? Does Nicodemus have like an intellectus of pain? Was that a thing that's mentioned in the books? Or is that just one of those like callbacks? Maybe he sees her favoring the leg a little bit, or because it's an old
even if she is entirely healthy, ruining someone's knee ruins their ability for combat, like even without any form of past issues.
Right. Sure. Yeah. I was like, wait a minute, things are starting to overlap here a little bit. So, because we don't know which leg it is, so
yeah, he doesn't like to specify things like that. I mean, right. Dresden burns his left hand, but like which leg is it of Murphy's that gets injured? Which eye of it is Odin's that he's missing? Even Rashid's eye, like he doesn't specify those.
So we have to make that choice for this. Yeah. So are they the same leg or are they not? Or do we
same leg? It pocket? Shows how good Nicodemus's intel is.
Right.
Or it's the other one, and it's even more tragic that she's now ruined both knees at
both legs. Yeah. Murphy got new legs. Or do we put this in our back pocket and we ask him the next time we interview him? So then we'll have a word of Jim and everyone could be appeased. So
yes, quite.
I like Cody's theory too. So and Daryl did his homework. So
that could be
right. So in which case it sounds like we're coming down on it's the same leg. So when we make that differentiator on screen and then we got to come back in book 15 and then somebody is like, man, that show was so good. I wonder what happened. And then they come find this podcast and they're like, they did it on purpose. Yeah. At least one person. So
they
put it in the IMDb trivia right now. Like we'll get it on IMDb and it'll be like the first trivia for this show that we're not doing.
We just got to wait for the success of the Harry Potter show and then we'll pitch it and we'll be like, what if I told you about a cooler Wizard Harry?
Yeah. What if it was Harry Potter, but he actually had a gun and way more adult, so yeah.
We can, Deadpool's been popular, rated R16, we could rated R, we could boobs. Swearing. Is boob 16?
Well, I was mostly confused with the whole there weren't any boobs in Deadpool and Wolverine actually.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking about. There was no boob, so is it is that or was it like Coke? That's the only thing they couldn't do.
That scene was amazing. Yeah. So my wife and our good friend, we were talking about it over dinner and they were like, I didn't know half of those. So because we were joking about like, do you want to build a snowman? They're like, I didn't know that was a euphemism for that. And it was like, I mean, it is, but it isn't, right?
Right.
Most likely, I feel like he was just making a joke as much because it's Disney and Disney owns Marvel and all of that stuff. But yeah, I was like, yes, several of those were real, and I knew them in advance. I went to public school, so. But yes, but I can't. All right, so anyway, yeah, I don't know where the nudity comes down. I think it depends on the context, but yeah, it's PG-13 here. It's either PG-13 or R. Is 16 your R, Andreas?
Yeah.
Okay, so then yes, then probably, especially if it's actually like sexual content and whatever, then yes, it's probably going to be R. So let's see. Yeah, so they're going back and forth. He's still got to go get the car. Murphy tries to give him the gun, and he says, "Keep it. You might need it." Dresden, my gun has been about as useful as fabric softener in a steel mill tonight. But someone out there has a rifle. If they're using one, it's because they're human, and you don't have most of your magic stuff with you. Take the gun. I can't leave you defenseless, Murph. Murph hauled up the leg of her jeans and pulled out a tiny automatic from an ankle holster. There's your tiny automatic.
There we go.
She worked the slide, checked the safety, and said, "I'm covered." I took the Colt, checked the chamber and the safety more or less by reflex. "That's a cute little gun there, Murph." She scowled at me. "I have small ankles. It's the only one I can hide there." Murphy's got a girl gun. Murphy's got a girl gun. Come a little closer and say that. So again,
this
more
whole
chemistry.
Like they're having a date at Walmart. This kind of banter is basically foreplay for them. This is like
for Dresden, this is pretty much a date. Yes.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I mean, seriously, like day off, same shit.
Yeah.
That's
it's only
dates.
Yeah, right. It's only a date if she thinks it's a date, first of all, right? But second of all, like, she was willing to kiss him. I feel like that crosses into date territory. So, yeah.
I mean, what did she do on her vacation to Hawaii? Huh? She came back with a broken arm.
Yeah. Good girls don't kiss and tell. She probably did several other things before the broken arm incident, I would imagine. So
I wonder when we'll get that Hawaii story.
Never, but hopefully eventually. So
it's gonna be
a trip to Hawaii for Butcher.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we kind of missed the prime time for it, right? He does most of them in some kind of chronological order, and Murphy's kind of, spoilers, Murphy's kind of dead now. So but blah blah blah. All right, so they have a little conversation about making sure that he'll signal her, because some of these guys can play dress up. Like, she doesn't fucking know that, because that's all of her trauma. This entire last couple of chapters was facing the monsters, like the one that looked like Dresden and got her. So let's see. There's some fun about him going around by the garden center and then freaking out because he hears some sounds, and he's got a gun now, so he points it at the garden center because the chlorophene's probably loose now. Let's see. Yeah, as I came closer through the mist, I saw the chain fence around the ruined area where I'd been trapped with the chlorophene. It had been torn down in a swath 10 feet wide, and from what I could see of the inside, the tree thing wasn't there anymore. Great. Took a few steps closer to the break in the fence and stared at the ruined chain link. I'd expected bent and stretched wire, still hot enough to burn where it had torn. Instead, I found edges cut off as neatly as with a set of clippers and coated with frost. Blah, blah, blah. He checks around at the damaged fence and whatever. Winter, I muttered. I guess that wasn't much of a stretch. My car wasn't in the first row, but a thin stream of some kind of yellowish fluid was. I traced it to the next row and found the beetle sitting there in its motley colors. Another leak. They weren't exactly unheard of in a wizard's car, but this would be a hell of a time for the beetle to get hospitalized. I had just passed the garden center with its ruined fence when my windows abruptly frosted over. It happened in the space of a breath, ice crystals forming and growing like plants on a stop-motion film until my view was completely cut off. The temperature dropped maybe 50 degrees and the car sputtered. If I hadn't given it a bunch of gas, it would have stalled. The beetle lurched forward and I rolled down the window, sticking my head out of the side in an effort to see what was going on and making a really good target for the rifleman. The chlorophene loomed up out of the mist and brought one huge knobby fist down on the beetle like an organic wrecking ball. The force of it crumpled the hood like tinfoil and drove the shocks down so that the frame smushed up against the tires. The impact threw me forward against the steering wheel and drove the breath out of me with shocked pain. The impact would have rolled any car with an engine under the hood. Most of the mass of the car would have been driven down. The lighter rear end would have flipped up, and me without my seatbelt would have bounced around like a piece of popcorn. The old Volkswagens, though, have their engines in the back. Most of the weight of the car bounced up a little in the air and then came back down to the ground with a jolt. I slammed my foot on the gas harder, and the Beetle's engine sputtered gamely in response. As big and strong as the chlorophene might be, it wasn't solid, and it wasn't as heavy as a living mass of the same size. The Beetle bounced up from the blow that had crumpled the empty storage compartment under the hood and slammed into the chlorophene without losing much of its momentum. The beast let out a shriek of what might have been surprise and was definitely pain. My car hammered into it with a flickering of scarlet static and a cloud of smoke from the substance of the fairy creature, swept under its legs and drove the chlorophene atop its hood. I kept my foot on the gas, held the wheel as steadily as I could with one hand, and stuck my head out the window so I could see. Speaking of Looney Tunes, I mean, this whole thing, right? You know. Mm-hmm. The chlorophene screamed again, the magic around it, gathering it in a cloud, made the hairs on my neck stand up, but the beetle rattled through the attempt to hex it down, carrying the chlorophene to the length of the Walmart garden center and to the back of the building. Think of it as payback for all those telephone poles, I muttered to the beetle and slammed on the brakes. The chlorophene rolled off my car, skidded on the asphalt, and slammed into the side of the metal trash bin with a yowl of pain and an exploding cloud of dirt clods. Only one of my headlights appeared to have survived the attack, and even it flickered woozily through the mist and the cloud of dust and dirt rising from the chlorophene. He gets the beetle basically to back up and ram it again into the garbage can. I torn the thing in half about the middle, pinching it between the battered, frost-coated beetle and the metal trash bin. Thank the stars it hadn't been a fiberglass job. The legs lay against the trash bin, now only a pile of twisted saplings and earth, while the arms flailed toward me a dozen long paces away, uselessly pounding the asphalt. I spat out of my window, put the car in gear again, and went to go get Murphy. I jumped out of the car, had to wrench the passenger door open. To get it open, Murphy pushed herself up, using the wall for support, and stared at the frost-covered beetle with wide eyes. What the hell happened? The plant monster. Mm-hmm. A plant monster and Frosty the Snowman? So he's trying to get her in the car. She yells Harry and throws her weight against him. The chlorophene's upper half had somehow clawed its way out of the mist, and one long, viney limb was reaching for me. I fell back away from it and tried to shield Murphy with my body. It got me. I felt fingers the size of young tree trunks wrap around my throat and jerk me away from Murphy like I was a puppy. More branch fingers got one of my thighs, and I felt myself suspended in the air and pulled slowly apart. Meddler, hissed an alien voice from somewhere near the chlorophenine's glowing green eyes. You should never have involved yourself in these affairs. You have no concept of what's at stake. Die for your arrogance.
Yeah, he definitely chose to get involved in this shit.
Right. Yeah. He's mostly getting killed and, starts to black out and is trying to ready a spell and a bunch of other nonsense. But I only dimly heard the chainsaw start up again and Murphy scream a challenge. The charm she wore wasn't relying on my concentration. Oh, right, because he's getting broken, so he loses concentration on his protection for the mind fog and everything like that. So it wouldn't last long, but it would keep the mist away from her for a few more minutes. The chlorophene let out a shriek, and I heard the saw biting into wood, felt wood chips hitting my face. I tumbled free, sapling branches all tingled all around my head and shoulders, leaves and dirt scratching my face. My leg was still in the chlorophene's grip, but I could breathe again. There's a lot of description here, but basically she just chainsaws the thing to death, and I think she jams it in its face. I gotta imagine it's also steel, so a really good weapon to use against the Fae.
Oh yeah,
and a tree. So if this was a Pokemon, it'd be taking 4 times damage right now because it's vulnerable, as a plant monster and a fairy. So you're welcome. You just tuck that away for later. So
thank you. I'll treasure it always.
Yeah. The riflemen start shooting at them, but then another sound cut through the night, police sirens getting closer. Murphy dragged me and herself over the ground toward the car. I heard a harsh curse somewhere in the mist and then a pair of footsteps retreating. A moment later, I thought the mist was starting to thin out. Murphy's all concerned about Dresden. Get us in the car, she said, enunciating the word. Get us in the car and get us out of here. The car, right. I hauled Murphy into the Beetle, got in myself, and stared at the frosted windshield. The heat of summer night was already melting the frost away, and I could see through it in spots. Harry, Murphy said, exasperated. Drive. Oh, right, drive. Get out. I put the Beetle in gear, more or less, and we lurched out of the parking lot and out of the mist. Chapter 20.
Having a brain fog and trying to get an old wrecked car into gear does not sound like fun.
Yeah. Brain fogged and got his ass beat and, so yeah.
Remember how to use a clutch.
Right. It's like riding a bike at that point, right? So
yeah, you hope.
Yep.
Is this where we stop or?
I think so. Like we could blow through chapter 22 if we really wanted to, but it's also kind of a natural place to pivot because it's the end of such a dramatic scene. But yeah, chapter 22 is basically they go to the alphas and the alphas give them first aid, and then Harry gives Billy the debrief and everything. So,
and then we also get it from Meryl. We get that chat on the balcony or something with Meryl, which it's a fun and interesting bit, but like we had the action and now we need the lull in between, and then we're gonna go back to action.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a little bit of a lull for a little bit. I'd have to check my notes, but yeah, because 22 is the debrief with the alphas. 23 he summons Leah. Then 24. I think 24 he calls the White Council and talks to Morgan. So yeah, we've got a lull, and basically lull, but raising the stakes also, a little bit where it's like you're wasting a bunch of time. You're trying to call allies. Guess what? They're not, so now it's you and the apocalypse, and you've still got to figure it out. Chapter 24 has a montage, for visual notes and stuff like that. So yeah, we're getting there. Yep. So yeah, the next couple of chapters will be a little bit of a lull. Then we've got, exciting stuff a bit, I guess we got a little bit of action with the unicorn outside the mother's house. We got a little bit of action afterwards where he gets jumped. But like
we get Rashid, all kind of one of the best scenes where Rashid finds Dresden hanging from his foot in the tree.
Yes. Yep.
And then we have the pre-battle, the jump before the battle, the battle, the cleanup after the battle. Like, yeah, there's still a lot of book left.
Yeah, and yet, like, it covers a lot of ground in a surprisingly few number of pages. Because
kind of like the Sanderson land, we're heading when it just starts going.
Yeah, we've got 67 pages left to get through all of the aforementioned description and still do the Battle of Fairy, which I've read up to the start of, I think, basically. And, so he basically, the whole Battle of Fairy and everything takes place in like 30 pages, and it's just like, and the cleanup and, like the aftermath and everything. And it's just wild. So.
Yeah. Well,
so another 4 episodes on Summer Night alone, right?
God, I was really trying to get us to like 2, but getting through 2 chapters, they were action-packed chapters. I thought we'd made it through the action. So I was like, we're going to get through what I've read. Nope. We didn't even do that. So, yeah.
Well, this has been an episode of the Dresden Files podcast. You can catch us every Saturday, almost every Saturday, live at 1 p.m. Eastern. Every other week it's Dresden. Every other week it's one we're recording where we talk about various things. What are we talking about next time?
Who fucking knows?
Hopefully we're finishing Aeronauts Winless because we're right on the end battle for that. Still haven't finished.
Oh, yeah.
So
Aeronauts Winless, yeah, we've been putting that off because we wanted everyone to be there and we've been having some scheduling conflicts. So hopefully that's happening next Saturday. And then we're moving into the short story for Aeronauts Winless there, and then the next book, I think, and then beyond that,
no promises at the moment.
Something like that, or we talk about whatever we want. You'll see.
Yeah, just show up. Why do we need to promise you a topic?
Because you know what we're gonna deliver.
Yeah. Just come listen to us ramble about something that will eventually turn into Star Wars or Marvel in some way.
Might be Alien next time. I mean, so.
All right.
Peace.